I'm honored today to have one of the great minds of the 21st century as well, Elaine Dundy. Elaine is a raconteur, a journalist, a writer, an actress, biographer, and she's here today to talk about her new book, Life Itself. Where did this picture come from?
That's me, age 12, doing a swan dive. I spent most of my summers as a child diving. I loved it. I loved it. And diving and swimming.
Elaine, what made you pick that picture?
You know, my publisher picked it. I said, I want the Dud Avocado picture. And she said, Elaine, a pretty girl is just a pretty girl. But this one says something, because I hadn't enclosed this picture. I said, yeah, not
It's
bad.
almost like the Nike shape, you know?
Yeah.
Be yourself, just do it. It's a wonderful, wonderful cover.
Diving into the cosmos, somebody put it.
Well, I'm so honored to be talking with you. You've been an actress, you've been a biographer. How did you settle on becoming a writer?
It is the only thing you can do without being asked. I mean, you cannot be an actress unless somebody asks you to be an actress. And after I had my child, my daughter, I said to myself, I'm not going to audition anymore. You know, they know what I can do. You know, they can call me, I won't call them, and they didn't.
Do you have a need to make a definitive idea about what you think, and does writing help you with that?
Writing surprises me. It absolutely surprises me. I thought that, you know, that my whole body of work was actually very different, each one different settings. You know, I was a moving target, in other words, and I found out, no, they all have the same thing, and it's the old Western gimmick of a stranger comes to town, to which I add, I am that stranger, and together with the reader, let me take you through this place and explain it, and we will all get to know what we get to know at the end and make some sense out of it.
Do you write every day?
Yeah. Not so much now that I finished this book. What I'm writing is sort of thank you letters and you know, whatever. So I haven't. The manuscript came in at 610 pages, and that was, you had to be cut in half. So there were a lot of things I didn't say. So maybe I will write another book on, you know, all those.
What does it feel like to have completed a book?
Well, good, yes, good. Then the critics come out, and I don't know about you, but because you're a writer too, but if they're a bad review, you think I've been exposed. They've caught on. If they're a good review, they're a good review. I am marvelous, you know, and I sort of go over in my mind these wonderful sentences. So it's too awful not to, you know, be able to have a persona that inside you that is strong enough to say, I'm me, you know, whatever.
Tell me about your early life. What was that like?
Well, first of all, an inspiration to me was my grandfather, who revolutionized fastening of seal by inventing a self-threading, self-tapping screw. Before that, it was nuts and bolts. This way, one person could do it. You do the screw. It's light, stays, and he actually fashioned two of America's fondest, favorite landmarks: the Statue of Liberty's drapes that were crumbling, and the Spirit of St. Louis.
They say that the first generation makes the money, the second generation spends it, and the third become artists. Do you think that's true?
Oh, is that what it is? Is that what it is?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's absolutely true, yeah.
Now, were you a rebel growing up? The times we were raised, women were not supposed to have any kind of job apart from a good marriage.
Yeah, there was my father, a hard-working businessman, and he obviously wanted his son to continue, you know, Universal Picture Corporation, whatever. And he has 3 daughters, and he does not know what to do with them. And he's very conservative. And so they send us to Lincoln School, where everybody's independent, you know, and we have a wonderful time. And coming back at night was like going back to prison. With my father was the sadistic warden. My sisters and I were the inmates, and my mother the snitch. You know, and it was not pleasant. My background was my battleground. I saw that, but it got me out of the house. You know?
Where did you go? You were living in New York at this time?
Living in New York, and I went to Lincoln School, which is a wonderful progressive school.
On the west side?
125th Street. Take the Fifth Avenue bus, zing, and there you are. And we did it as children. You know, there was no
fear of
yeah,
being
that's
absconded.
right. I mean, perfectly safe.
Now, how did you get to England?
How did I get to England? Went to Paris. Went to Paris as an actress. I thought I can get work there because there were some Americans there doing lots of films. You know, this is post-war. Post-war was the 50s was an absolutely wonderful, wonderful time. We'd won the war. We were alive. And there was an explosion of culture. And I was, went to Paris. Then I thought, yeah, it's hard. I speak French well, but you know, but I can't get away with it. And England, let's face it, you know, speaks English, so I better see what I can do over there. So I went over there. I was in a poetry reading, and on the BBC. All of this led to my meeting Ken. We met at Kenneth Tynan,
the famous critic, and also the writer of Hair. I think we're going to see a picture of Kenneth Tynan with you right now.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he opened the door for me, and I walked through.
Oh, how lucky you were.
I know. To be in London, you know, they had particularly won the war because they stood alone for a while, if you remember. And it was an explosion of culture. And I was meeting Eric. And the point was that everyone wanted to meet him. I mean, Ava Gardner would call and say, I'm here because I'm doing Magambo, but we've got a break and I've come to England. Nick Ray said to look you up, can I come over? You know, it was, I mean, that just kept happening. And
what is this picture?
I can't see it. What is it?
I think it's a picture of you and Ken in the bedroom.
Oh.
He's got a drink and you're kind of loving toward him.
Well, that could be. That could be. I don't think that's a picture I've ever seen. Oh, yes, maybe it is, yeah. That's a picture that my sister Shirley Clark took. Shirley Clark became, besides being a friend of yours, which is terrific, I didn't realize, was a filmmaker and used video, really, in a way that really, you know, started the MTV generation.
I knew Shirley. We were both living at the Chelsea Hotel in New York, where a lot of artists and writers live. Virgil Thompson was living there, and your sister knew everyone. Yeah. And she made the famous film about the black junkie, but I can't think what the name of it was.
Well, there were two. It was the Connection. The Connection was a group of musicians that are waiting for Cowboy, who was the black
dealer.
Yeah. To give them their shots, and it became a kind of work of art somehow, because in their wanting, you know, and needing it, they were making music out of that want and need, you know. So it was a riveting a production. Did you ever see it?
Never, no.
Well, she went to Cannes with it and just knocked them all dead, you know, and they gave a big party for her, and Allen Ginsberg, the whole Beat Generation was there, living with her.
Were you jealous of each other, or were you competitive? Was it synergistic?
You know, not really. First of all, I depended on her. I mean, she said to an artist who said, you know, Piet Mondrian has just come over, and all he wants to do is to jitterbug. And she said, my sister, meaning me, is the best jitterbug I know.
Was that true? Could you show us? No.
Yeah, a little bit. And so I found myself in Madison Square Garden jitterbugging with Piet Mondrian.
What was he like?
Chewing gum. Well, that was my impression. I was very young that, you know, this man and I were jitterbugging. There were tons of people there. And also we were chewing gum because that's what he liked too.
It's amazing because his most famous painting is called Boogie Woogie, and although it's totally abstract, you get the rhythm, you get the strong feeling.
Yeah. Well, again, you know, in the 30s and the 40s, I was there when New York was the place to be with the arts, you know, and music and so forth.
Now tell me about Orson Welles. He was a pal of yours.
Orson was somebody I fell in love with when he did the Mercury Theater, and as children we all went to see it. We even went backstage and meet Orson, and I daydreamed, you know, that I would be at the Store Club and he would be with me. And I had, you know, I had a strapless dress on, and sort of waves of hair and black lipstick and so forth. And so it was very interesting when I finally met him, because I was then holding real conversations, whereas I had held dream conversations. Anyway, first
did you have on that dress, the strapless dress, when you met him?
No, but when I wrote the Dud Avocado, the opening scene is a girl in a strapless dress and an evening dress walking down the Boulevard de Saint-Michel at 11 o'clock in the morning, because she can't get her stuff out of the cleaners because she always misses them, you know. She wakes up too late. But it's a strapless dress. Strapless dresses were wonderful, weren't they?
The Dud Avocado. You and I both had a friend, Grafton Tanquery, who was one of the people you mentioned in that book.
Yeah.
Used him as a vehicle.
Yeah. I made him a Canadian and very good looking and a photographer, and in love with the heroine of the story.
And who was that?
Well, that's interesting. It was me the outrageous things, you know, and more sensible things were, you know, were her, were Sally J.
Now tell me about Orson. What was he like?
Yeah. So, yeah, I did a radio show with him, and just the two of us finally in the afternoon, and he said, come on, let's just read it without even looking at it. I had been assigned several parts. I had to stop in the middle and say, Orson, I can't go on. I'm following myself on. He said, that's ridiculous. Shouted at the producer, where are all the other actors? And the producer said, don't you remember you fired them at lunchtime?
Was he drinking, or was he
No,
just...
but you know, these big personalities, which is what I call them, are so idiosyncratic. They always do something you remember, you know, like that. That's the introduction you get. And we got to know him very well because we went to bullfights for 10 years, and he was an aficionado too. And so we were...
When I was a little girl, my parents were out for the evening, and War of the Worlds came on, and I truly thought it was what was happening.
Did you?
A news release that this was the end of the world. I think a lot of people felt that way. Did you ever have that experience?
I just got the end of it, you know, with people running in New Jersey, sort of bumping into each other and killing themselves. But when we played it back, Ken and I, Ken said that the most chilling and wonderful touch was there would be sort of a blackout of people talking, and then there would be sort of a piano tinkling when they got it together. It was like, in England, it was like Kennedy's assassination, when we got just on the television, you know, Kennedy was shot, and then a perfectly dead air, no tinkling piano, but usually there is something, isn't there, like when the telephone's on hold, you know.
That you remember the exact moment, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, he really didn't think that, and none of the cast really thought that people would do that. I mean, it was going up to World War II, wasn't it? So there was a lot of tension.
I think we have a picture of you with Orson, or at least a picture of Orson.
Yes, I love that picture of Orson because it's something he did all the time. This was in Spain, and he was at a Spanish film festival. All these loving Spaniards are looking up to him, and he's very much at home.
Elaine, once he had a girlfriend here in L.A., and he wanted me to meet his girlfriend who wanted to be a painter. And so he arranged it through somebody that I would go to her house. And then there was a knock on the door, and he came in. He said, oh, did I surprise you? And we all pretended we didn't know he was coming. And then he pretended to be an art dealer for the entire afternoon. He told us stories about Picasso, about his days on the left bank. It was the most charming afternoon. He was wonderful.
Yeah, it is. And he would make these statements that were begging to be refuted, like Peking was the cultural center of Europe, and it turned out to be right.
Tell me about, I think you knew Ernest Hemingway and Tennessee Williams.
Yeah.
Tell me about them.
Well, you know, I was writing about Ernest Hemingway. I was writing about Tennessee, and I kept them mutually exclusive because they're the yang and yin of American letters. They couldn't be further apart in their writing and in everything.
Why? Why?
Well, because, exactly, because everyone knows what a Hemingway hero is, and you know, and the hard-fought upper lip kind.
Here's a picture of the two of them.
Yeah, yeah. And it's wonderful. There's Hemingway sort of watching the bullfight in the bull ring, and then the other one is Tennessee, very contemplative with a cigarette with a holder.
Go on. So tell us about Hemingway.
Oh, yeah. So, okay, Hemingway and Tennessee. So, yeah, everyone knows about the stiff upper lip, you know, grace under pressure, hard won, grace under pressure. That's a Hemingway hero. And everyone knows what disgrace under pressure is an overwrought Tennessee Williams heroine. But, you know, they had things that, so they were very different, but they had things that, together.
For example?
For example, they both lived in Key West, not, you know.
Were they there at the same time?
They weren't there at the same time. Hemingway first, Tennessee then. But they both got something from, have you been to Key West?
Never, no.
Yeah, well the climate is awful. I mean, you know, it's hot at night. The heat just collects at night. Anyway, they both worked very, very well. They were both very interested in Catholicism. Hemingway said to me that he was an honorary Catholic. The Latin culture, in other words, you know, they were both interested in. And Tennessee's brother, when he had flu, Dakin, his brother, convinced him that he must become a Catholic so he could get to heaven.
Did they have the same kind of mother?
They both had domineering mothers, yes.
Somebody once told me that de Kooning and Franz Klein had the mother that should decorate the prow of a ship. You know, a big busted woman that thought she was right and everybody else was wrong. Was this the kind of mother you're talking about?
Very, yeah, you've got it, yeah, absolutely both of them, yeah, absolutely both of them. But Hemingway just hated her and demonized her so much that, you know, she didn't come to life, and he felt sorry for her, whereas Tennessee in Glass Menagerie made you understand her, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, even though she's wrecking the life of these two kids, you understand that she's hanging in there.
What about the fathers? Did they both have strong fathers?
Well, they both had. They were both in the end embarrassed by their fathers. Hemingway, because his father shot himself, as did Hemingway.
No.
Yeah, and his mother sent him the gun.
No.
Yes. What is that about?
We know what it's about.
Go shoot yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Scott Peck deals with that in his book about good and evil. Yeah, the parents handed over the gun once this one son had committed suicide to the second one.
And the father, Tennessee's father, was just disappearing. You know, he just never turned up. So, but they loved their grandfathers. Their grandfathers were the people they idealized, and the Hemingway grandfathers fought with the Union in the Civil War, and he made them into heroes. And Tennessee's grandfather was a minister in Clarksdale in Mississippi, and Tennessee would go around with him, and he would get in on all the gossip. He would get in on the funerals. He would get in on the sick beds. He would get in on who was doing who, and that's where his bodies are buried. So his symbols are religious, and Hemingway's are military.
Well, it's funny you put them together in the book. Did they actually like each other?
They did meet once.
Where?
And then never again. They were both in Havana together. Again, you see, you have the Latin culture that they're so interested in. Spain, Italy, they do, you know, they write about it all the time. That's odd, isn't it? The two greatest writers of our time are really writing almost at their best when they're writing about Spanish culture.
Amazing, amazing. Now let's get to your favorite, the one that you loved the most. I remember when the Gladys and Me came out, you were so excited about Elvis Presley. How did that come about?
Well, it came about with his death because, honestly and truly, in 1977, I didn't know he was dead until I didn't know he was alive until he died.
How is that possible?
Well, living in England, it's very easy then, people forget, not to see an Elvis movie, not to go to Vegas and rave over him, not to be any part of that culture. And so I don't think I registered that I ever heard of him or anything. Then when he died, the air was filled with Elvis. And
he had an obsession with his mother, too. I guess he had the same kind of mother.
He had a mother, he had just the right mother. Their
Really?
their needs dovetailed. They dovetailed. They both wanted, they knew that he was the one that was going to drag them out of poverty.
Of Tupelo.
In East Tupelo. And they had wonderful, you know, she
There's
walked
a picture of you with her.
and no, not with that. So she was dead. No, the picture is with her older sister, who I love, Lillian. Yeah, who
well,
I love.
Go on, tell us about it.
About Lillian?
Yeah.
Oh, well, she's so funny. She was just you know, she did tell me a very interesting story. She said, I remember the little shotgun house burning. The father was in jail for forging a check. Gladys was very downhearted. She said, I remember Elvis, 2.5 years old, running up and down the shotgun house. Every time he came to Gladys, he would pat her hand and say, there, my little baby.
So he was responsible for the family.
A tremendous role rehearsal with Vernon, too. There's another picture in my mind of him that people told me about, age 10, driving their truck with the two of them sitting there. They knew he was, you know, he was
going
the one
to save
yeah,
them.
and he always referred to them as his babies.
No.
Yeah. I mean, he was a sole support at 19.
Do you think there's any way he could have avoided the tragedy his life became?
You know, I don't know. I mean, it's so mainstream now to know that people go through alcoholism or drugs. It's silly, you know, to pretend
or
it's
in his
not
case,
there.
overeating. Yeah.
But I think he had the most awful entourage, the most awful entourage. They did, you know, and then they were like the apostles. You know, the minute he died, they just crucified him.
They all wrote their
with
books.
You know, against him. Now that he has become an icon, now that he has become a hero, they're all on board again, saying, "Oh, I remember him, and he loved me. Yes, he fired me, but then he fired me all the time." You know?
I remember once when I was in college, a friend took me to meet him when he was recording the song Teddy Bear.
Yeah.
And I was the only woman there, and all the entourage was there in the recording studio, but he came out, introduced himself to me, and he was not interested in me, but he was such a gentleman.
Yeah. But Maureen Stapleton has you know, the same thing. She was auditioning or whatever it was. She was in the studio. She had a little boy, Danny, and she looked very worried, and he said, "Can I help you, ma'am?" And
No, really?
Yeah. She said, "Well, you know, I got my little," he said, I'll look after him. You know?
My father was an executive at Paramount while he was making the films for Hal Wallace, and said that he was the most gentlemanly, nice person that he had ever met.
Well, that comes through Gladys. That absolutely comes through Gladys. That you know, that you treat everyone with consideration. You have consideration for people, and you treat them, you know, as you would like to be treated yourself.
Now, in your book, you've talked about a minister who was a friend of Elvis's. Was it Frank?
Frank Smith was his name, yes. And he was his first pastor. And they used to bury mice together. You know, the boys would go, and he would come with them and have a little. And it was the First Assembly of God Church, which has produced some interesting people like Edward Edwards, the governor of Louisiana, Jerry Lee Lewis, Mickey Gilley, Jimmy Swaggart. They all got a chance to perform in the First Assembly of God, and Elvis. And so he was the first pastor, and he would play a guitar. He would sing. When I first went to the First Assembly I spent 6 months in Tupelo, by the way. So
did you really?
Yes,
Where did you live there?
I lived at the Ramada Inn. Hey, I thought it was bliss. You know, I lived in England. I didn't know that they had a swimming pool and everything. It was lovely. What was I going to say? Oh, yes. So it was the first time I went to a First Assembly church service. A girl was singing with a guitar. She stopped. She sounded like Barbara Streisand, I have to say. She stopped in the middle and she said, "I lost my key. You have to pray for me. I lost my key."
Don't you think think there's something about gospel music that's very sexual and yet it's turned to God? It's the strangest
Oh, it's the
thing.
same, yeah, it's the same thing. And I think when Elvis was singing the, quote, dirty songs, he didn't think it was any different than he was singing gospel. The rhythm is the same, it's very involving, very sexually involving.
How do you want people to come away from your book feeling?
That they had a very pleasant time.
That they had a good time.
That they had a really good time.
Do you feel morals are quite different today than they were in your day? You write about the freedom, the sexual freedom in Paris.
Yeah, well, that is true. We were post-syphilis and pre-AIDS. So that was, what, about 30 years? So we all had carnal knowledge of each other, but it was for fun and for free.
Did it break up marriages, or did marriages?
Well, sometimes, you would go on the merry-go-round and say, I'm getting off here. And although Ken had lots of affairs, and disturbing because they were so public, I had lots of affairs, which I tried to keep private. But, yeah, he was a very violent man. My father was a violent man, violent towards women. And I thought, appointment in Samara. How did this,
Well, several good things came out of that marriage. I guess one of them being Tracy, your wonderful daughter, who is doing quite well.
Yeah. And I'm a grandmother, and that's nice. Matthew and Ruby.
Do you find it hard being an artist to pay attention to things like being a grandmother?
That's so interesting. Yeah, because I love children. I got along with children and everything, and yet when I was doing the book, I thought, wait a minute, I have to get out of this and come into, flipping cards or playing Go Fish or something. It's fun, but it's
It takes you to a different place,
yeah,
and it's very hard.
That your friends don't take you to, that you find Los Angeles good for work? I do, because everybody's working, aren't they?
I like New York much better. I've just come back, and I do an art program there, which I love. I come back so energized because the temperature is much quicker. I mean, the pace.
Yeah, much.
And
much,
here, everybody says, have a nice day. There's a lot of covert kind of analyzing underneath.
Yeah.
I like that
No,
energy.
New York has an electricity, probably, under the ground. It's,
And you can walk everywhere. Here you have to get in the bullet.
True, yeah.
Well, I'm just so glad that we had this opportunity to talk. What's next? My last question, final question.
It's something called This Comes Later. That's what I couldn't put in the book. Will be in that book.
What will that be?
What was that? This Comes Later. Oh, what Dorothy Parker said to me and what I said to Norman Mailer.
Great.
Yeah, go on like that.
Well, thank you so much, Elaine. And it was just a treat to get to talk to you and to share some time with you. I feel that we're honored to have you in Los Angeles.
Oh, thank you.